I'm 82 years old now. I wake up earlier than I need to. That's something work leaves behind in a man. For 45 years my mornings began before the sun, and the habit never really left me. These days there's nowhere I have to be. Most mornings I walk slowly into the kitchen, make a cup of coffee, and sit at the same table my wife and I bought nearly 40 years ago. The chair creaks a little when I sit down. The house settles around me the way old houses do. And it's quiet. When you're young, you don't notice noise very much. It just exists around you. Children running down the hallway, someone calling from another room, doors opening and closing. You don't realize how much life is in those sounds until they're gone. The house stays quiet now. Most of the day, sometimes I sit there with my coffee and think about how strange it is that I spent so much of my life wishing for quiet, wishing for a break from the rush, the pressure, the constant responsibility. Now I have more quiet than I ever imagined, and it doesn't feel the way I thought it would. I'm not an unhappy man. I've had a good life in many ways. I had steady work, a roof over my head, a family. But when you reach this age, you start seeing your life as one long story instead of separate years. And sometimes you notice things you didn't understand when they were happening. I spent 45 years working in the same company, an office job. Meetings, reports, deadlines, nothing glamorous, just the steady climb that a lot of men in my generation believed in. I started there when I was 25. I remember my first day clearly. I wore a stiff white shirt and a tie that felt a little too tight. My hands felt awkward carrying a briefcase that still smelled like the leather store where I bought it. I wanted to prove myself. That's what drove me in those early years. My father worked in a factory his whole life. Long hours, hard labor. I respected him deeply. But somewhere along the way, I decided my life would look different. I wanted a career. Back then that word sounded important, like it meant you were building something lasting. I had just gotten married around that time. My wife and I lived in a small apartment above a bakery. In the mornings the hallway smelled like fresh bread. We didn't have much money, but I remember feeling hopeful. When I came home from work those first few weeks, I'd tell her about the office, about the people there, about the small things I was learning, and she would listen with a kind of quiet pride. Those were simple days. Then life started moving faster. A few years in, I got my first promotion. It wasn't dramatic, just a small step up, but it felt like proof that the long hours were worth something. Recognition is powerful when you're young. It tells you you're on the right path. Around that same time, our daughter was born. I remember standing in the hospital room, holding her in my arms. She was so small, I was afraid to move. I looked down at her and felt something shift inside me. Responsibility. A quiet promise formed in my mind that day. I was going to give her a stable life, a safe one. And work seemed like the way to do that. At first it didn't feel like work was taking anything away. I stayed late occasionally, brought home papers once in a while. It felt temporary. Then another promotion came. More responsibilities, more people relying on me. The office started asking a little more of my time, and I said yes. That's the thing about ambition. It rarely feels like a sacrifice while it's happening. It feels like progress. Our son was born when I was in my early 30s. By then my days were full from morning to night. I would leave the house before the children were fully awake and return when the sky was already dark. Dinner was usually waiting when I got home. The kids would talk about school. My wife would ask about work, and often I would say the same thing. Just a busy week. I said that sentence for decades. Just a busy week. The strange part is that those busy weeks quietly turned into busy years. I missed small things at first. A school meeting, a recital, things that seemed minor compared to the deadlines waiting for me at the office. I remember one evening when my daughter had a music recital at school. She had been practicing the piano every afternoon for weeks. The night before, she asked me if I would be there. I said yes, of course I would be there. But the next day at work something came up. A problem with a project. A meeting that ran longer than expected. I kept looking at the clock. I told myself I'd leave soon. By the time I got into the car, the recital had already started. And by the time I reached the school, it was over. When I came home that night, the house was quiet. My daughter had already gone to bed. My wife said she played beautifully. She also said our daughter kept looking out into the audience while she performed. I stood there in the kitchen listening to that. I said I was sorry. But the next morning I went back to work, and the week continued. That's how time disappears, when you're busy building a career. Not through dramatic decisions, through small ones. Another late evening. Another promise that things will slow down next year. Another belief that your family understands. And for the most part they did. My wife was patient, stronger than I realized at the time. But one evening during dinner, she said something quietly. "You're here," she told me, "but you're not really here." I didn't fully understand what she meant back then. I thought presence meant providing, making sure the mortgage was paid, making sure the children had what they needed. It took me many years to understand that being physically present and truly being there are two very different things. The promotions kept coming. Each one felt like a milestone, a bigger office, a higher salary, more people depending on my decisions. Eventually my name was printed on the door. I remember standing in that office for the first time, looking out the window at the city below. I felt proud, like the years of effort had finally led somewhere important. But success has a strange way of moving just out of reach. Every achievement led to another expectation, another responsibility, another reason to stay late. At home, life kept moving. My children grew taller. Their voices changed. Their interests shifted. I noticed it mostly in brief moments. A photograph on the refrigerator, a conversation at dinner that I only half heard because my mind was still at work. And then one day they were adults, packing suitcases, leaving for college. I remember standing in the driveway after my son left. The house felt suddenly bigger, but I told myself it was normal. Children grow up, life moves forward. Work still filled my days, so I kept going. I retired when I was 70, 45 years after that first nervous morning in the office. The company held a small retirement gathering. There was a cake in the conference room, a few speeches. People thanked me for my dedication. Someone handed me a watch with an inscription on the back. It was kind, but 2 weeks later someone else was sitting in my office. And the company kept running just fine. That realization came quietly. All those years I believed I was essential. But companies move on quickly. Families do too. Retirement wasn't what I expected. At first it felt like freedom. No alarms, no deadlines. But slowly I started noticing the spaces in my life. My children had their own families by then, their own routines, their own busy weeks. They called, they visited when they could, but there was a distance that hadn't existed when they were small. Not anger, just distance. And I realized something slowly during those quiet years. Relationships grow the same way careers do, through time, through attention, through presence. And when you're absent long enough, something changes. Not suddenly, just gradually. At 82, I think about the years that passed while I was chasing promotions. The evenings I could have come home earlier. The weekends I could have said no to work. The moments when my children were young and looking for me in the audience. Those years are gone now. Time doesn't refund itself. No title ever gave me another chance to sit at the dinner table with my children when they were small. No promotion ever returned the sound of their footsteps running down the hallway. I'm not saying my life was empty. It wasn't. I'm grateful for many things, but pride and regret can exist together. I used to think I had more time. I kept saying I'd slow down next year. I believed I was building a better future. But life was already happening in the present, while I was planning for it. Now the mornings are quiet. I sit by the window and watch the sunlight move slowly across the floor. Sometimes one of my grandchildren runs through the house during a visit and fills the rooms with noise again. And in those moments I realize something simple. The things that mattered most were never waiting at the office. And they were here the whole time. I just didn't see it clearly until the house became quiet enough to hear it.